Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila with your host, Kristen Olson. Questioning a better way, one gracefully disruptive conversation at a time.
Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila. I'm so excited to have this conversation today. We have a mental health and physical entrepreneur, enthusiast, and fellow CrossFit family, Nicole Kernohan. Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yes, we are a connect of a connect. So I have to give a special shout out to Fred, who is such a varsity human, also fellow CrossFitter. He is all things economic literacy and note investing. So go check him out. The Little Green Book. If you know, you know, I'll link him into this. But Nicole is a connect through him. So I always appreciate, I'm an advocate for networking and getting your like-minded humans around you. So keep that going strong. Nicole, I'm going to give a quick bio, but then we're going to jump right onto her journey because she's had an extraordinary one. And it's really applicable to growth mindset, high performance for adults and the humans she coaches. And we're going to caveat this conversation that these are conversations you can have with your young humans, your kiddos, people you coach, fellow athletes at the gym that are younger, because these conversations are happening so much earlier due to social media and just, you know, society in general. So this is a good coaching opportunity for adults and kids. Nicole is a high performance coach, speaker, author, and the COO of Elevated Worldwide. She is waking up the world to powerful, inspiring, and fulfilling lives and business. So Nicole, let's jump in here. Tell us about young Nicole. I'm guessing you were kind of on a mission as a 0-year-old, but give us the 411 on youthful Nicole.
Well, yes. Yeah, no, I thank you so much, Kristen. Yeah, at a young age, I've always been very positive. So the essence that I would just say in my soul is really a positive, bubbly, upbeat person. So it took me a while to fully embrace that because there was actually a period of time where that style, I felt like it didn't feel professional, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little side note, but this idea of embracing who you really are. So that is who I really am, this positive little firecracker. I'm only 5 feet tall, so I'm quite petite. But I have learned that in CrossFit, you know, a lot of the professionals are pretty not that tall. So
the lack of height serves you on many levels. Burpees, we can go on, but yes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, 100%. So yeah, I've always had this kind of natural tendency to want to see the best case scenario, to see the glass half full. And I was raised really with that perspective for the most part, which I'm super grateful for because I know that is not the way a lot of the world is raised, not with the glass half empty perspective. So
right.
It's really powerful.
That's amazing. Was coaching, not to interrupt you, was coaching or leadership or entrepreneurship in the blood in the family?
Yeah, my parents have been entrepreneurs they just sold their business. Their final businesses they just sold this past year. So they were in about 40 years as entrepreneurs. Wow. My grandparents and aunts. So a lot of family members, primarily in retail, fast food retail businesses. So,
interesting.
But entrepreneurship has been in the blood, and 100%. Like, right, if someone is raised in an environment where they see that it's okay to do that, to branch off and to do your own thing, it's up to you. It's a choice, but you don't have to work 9 to 5 or work in it for someone. It's an option. Because I was raised in that environment, it was normal for me to decide after 10 years in corporate to go and start my own business. A lot of people thought I was crazy, but that's because they're programmed to not see that as a safe option. So,
right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a lot of it's personality driven, but to your point, a lot of it is nature and the nurture of, you know, leading by example and the influence in your life. So you see that opportunity. That's why accessibility and the conversation we're gonna have today is so important. So our young people can be led by example and not just, you know, talked to or talked at. It's us walking in it while we're preaching what we're walking in what we're preaching. And I think that makes a big difference in today's day and age.
Totally. And it's all about like options, like just to your point, knowing that you're talking with them. Some people and their personality might totally embrace a 9 to 5. That might feel good. They might prefer to be in that environment or work more optimally in that environment. And then other people who are just big visionaries or don't stick to schedules, like they might operate better working on their own schedule. So it's not right or wrong or good or bad. It's just the ability for our youth and adults to be able to truly understand that there are options. So
Absolutely. Well, you speak a lot about growth mindset and authenticity, and I want to unpack the authenticity kind of quick, because I think that is where the rub with mental health really starts, where we've got, there's no good or bad, but how do we find out who we really are? As an adult, I probably started unpacking, asking those questions in like late 20s, 30s, where again, now our young people are doing some of these Myers-Briggs or just conversations on TikTok, in middle school to high school of, okay, either path is great, but how do I know what I authentically want to do? Like, how do I find my authentic self? Tell me like a little bit about your journey in that and any good tips you have around it.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. So it is a big question. The willingness to explore it is the start, because we are primarily programmed. Like I use the word programming because it's just 93 to 97% of us operate on that subconscious level, where we are just programmed. If your parents said this or did this, or your teacher said this or did this before age 7, their conscious mind isn't developed. So I just want to preface by saying, our youth or adults, whatever you believe about yourself today may or may not be a fact, but it was programmed at a young age. Most of our beliefs are before age 7, 8, right? So
Right.
so it's just the willingness to even decide to look at it and say, wait, do I even value that? Do I even believe that? That's the first step. And that's my first tip.
There you
Is
go.
to ask the question, wait, is that true? Is it true that I'm not good enough to start my own business? Is it true
Right.
that the only way to make money is to work hard and work 10 hours a day? Is that a fact, or is that just a belief that I've been programmed to believe by often well-intended adults?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'm not trying to throw everyone under the bus. They were programmed too.
Right. Right.
So the first step is to be willing to look at it and take a step back and just kind of, it's almost like I like to say, wait, that's why I said wake up, right? When you said my bio, it's like, wake up. You got to snap out of it, because we're so subconsciously programmed. You got to snap out of it just to take a second and actually look at some of the beliefs and the perspectives that you have. And speaking of, allowing the youth to figure out who they are, figure out what are your actual desires. Mm-hmm. What are your passions? This is for the youth or adults. Like, what are things that you're interested in? If you love being creative, but you grew up in an environment where your parents were super analytical and they just thought creativity, you can't make money in that, so you can't do that for a living. Again, maybe well-intended. They want you to, the parent maybe wanted their child to succeed in life, and that was their belief that they passed on. So allowing yourself in this discovery to figure out, what do you actually enjoy? What are your desires? What are you passionate about? And just bringing those up to the surface can help open the crack to allowing yourself to see that.
Well, one of the big reasons I ask, tell me about your young self, because usually that intel is there very early before you're conditioned or programmed in any which way. You just do, you play with dolls, or you build things, you dig holes, you go, find worms in the fountain or in the creek or whatever it is. Like, usually you're just drawn by your nature to certain things. And I think very early on, we like, the writing's in the stars early, and we just don't listen until later on. Were there things you did as a young person where you look back and you're like, of course I'm doing what I'm doing now?
Oh yeah, 100%. And this is so good. Again, for adults who are listening to this, or for if you have teenagers, or if it's some teenager listening, one of the ways that I've identified, and I even have seen my clients identify what they're good at, is to think about things that annoy other people about you, which is often something that has been going on for a long time. So one thing for me was that I talk too much. I'm like, okay, right? I just always was talking. I would be punished as a child. My mother would say, go sit in the corner. That there was a corner back then.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I was totally fine, because I would talk to myself. So I was like, this is no problem. Me and myself here are fine in this corner. And so she said, okay, stop talking. And that was the true punishment, right? So there are things that I've known that about myself from a young age. And sometimes those characteristics can either annoy other people, or you may have instances in life where someone squashed that about you. So that's why it is really good to allow it to come back out. And I love that idea, like to go back into childhood. For me, it was being positive, like too optimistic, like not realistic, and talking a lot were two things. And now I'm a positive psychology coach and speaker. And I didn't get here overnight. I went through other career paths, but eventually when you allow yourself to discover what you're really good at and what you really desire and what you value, you can step into that.
And how perfect is that? I think it's really important that our kiddos hear that story, because I'm like you. If you don't have a podcast now, Nicole, you should at some point, because I was always talking. I was always in trouble. I was, distracted. I wanted to know, what's going on where. Like, I wasn't really a gossipy type. Tea is still not my thing, but I love just getting to know people and whatever. And it was. And we're too something. Too quiet, too loud, talking too much. You're too much in general. Your energy's too high. You're too positive. You're not positive. And like, we are always too something. So I think it's intel on probably what you're supposed to do when you're too something. And B, I think it's really early. It's good early to be like, if someone's saying I'm too something, like that's on them. Like whatever it is, like we're all too something for somebody and probably most people, but that's not your tribe. You don't need everybody to validate who you are. And the second part I would say is sometimes what you're going to do might not be a thing yet, like positivity coaching or podcasting or, some of this stuff when we were younger wasn't really a thing yet. So, it does, however intentional you want to be, like there is divine timing of like stuff just happening right at the right time. So you got to show up, you got to do the work. And for my young people listening, don't rush it. Don't push it. It's going to happen. What needs to happen. Do what you can, but we don't really control a ton at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? Every single life experience can bring skills and experiences into the next thing. So, I don't regret any of my career experiences. Some were great. Some really struggled in. But I learned something in each one of those pieces that I can now bring in to today. So I love that. Absolutely. It's not a rush. It's a journey.
Yes. Yeah. Your life is not an emergency. Someone said that once and I was like, oh, but actually it is. I got to do this, this, and this. And so it takes some time. Well, I want to talk about, because we always want to unpack the human behind the mission, before the mission. And you had some really incredible health issues and lifestyle things that I think really complemented your personal and professional career and journey. Do you want to share how, life kind of like made you pause and then perhaps pivot or look at things different and then put you on a certain trajectory?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was my biggest pivotal moment, I guess, in life was I was 21. I'm 43 right now. I was 21 and I had a physical episode where I lost the functionality of the right side of my body. So I became paralyzed on the right arm and the right leg over a few days. It didn't happen instantly. I woke up it was tingling and starting to get numb. And over a few days, it turned into the full paralysis. It was actually initially diagnosed as a stroke. I don't know if I mentioned that, Kristen, because at that initial brain scan, they only could see one lesion, and the symptoms are very similar. It was a lesion on the left side, and my symptoms were on the right. But later they found multiple lesions, and it re-diagnosed, which they had already predicted previously, but they officially re-diagnosed it as multiple sclerosis.
Wow! So
it was a shocking. Totally unexpected. I was young. I was generally healthy. One thing that I was not, though, was able to manage my stress. I was, to your comment a little earlier, like life's not an emergency, but really it is.
Yeah.
Everything's an emergency. Everything needs to be done right now. Everything needs to be perfect. That was, and it was programming. All right. I wasn't born with that perspective. But I know that put my body into a space of not being able to handle. Like eventually, if you're just in go mode, high gear all of the time, stress, overwhelm, anxiety, like your body's going to give you some signs. So I don't think it wasn't necessarily the cause of multiple sclerosis, but I believe it was likely the trigger of having some of those symptoms really appear and show up so profoundly. So that was the moment. Now, the interesting thing was my mindset was I was super optimistic and I did mention that I was naturally programmed to be optimistic. I was optimistic as a child, but the doctor said you may or may not regain functionality. It's typically degenerative. Like if anyone knows what multiple sclerosis is, it is, there are different forms of it, but it is typically a degenerative condition. This is 20 years later, and you can't see me. If you're listening without the video, and even on video, you can't see my whole body. But clearly, by my intense CrossFit nature.
Yeah.
I'm doing great today and have been for 20 years. But I heard the doctor's diagnosis, and I chose not to believe the prognosis.
Mm-hmm.
So this is key for anyone listening, parents, adults, humans. It's, we so often look up to people either in business or in medical field or other, and respectfully so. Like if there are diagnoses, or if someone's looking at your financials in your business and you just see the facts, like you can choose to accept the diagnosis and see that. That's not, you don't have to ignore it, but you don't have to accept the prognosis, which means you're going to go bankrupt, or you're likely going to degenerate over time, or like whatever the prognosis is. And that was, at that time I didn't know what I know now about psychology. I just naturally, innately had this unwavering faith and belief, 100% faith and belief that I was capable and going to heal and recover. And I know I didn't know at the time, but I know now, after studying for so many years, that was the catalyst of my ability to heal. And it was the catalyst that changed the trajectory of my actions. I met with lots of naturopathic doctors and nutritionists, and including my neurologist. When you believe that you're what's possible for you, it changes your actions, and it changes the energy in your actions, which obviously leads to different results. So that's a piece of the journey. That was the turning point for me. That really got me passionate about helping others.
That's so crazy. I think universe, thank you for sharing that. I say God, universe, Madonna, whatever you believe, higher power is somehow checks us, like, I feel like in our hardest, weakest spot, and really makes you like, and especially if you're a high achiever, mission driven, focused, we talk about this a lot on the podcast, you're going to do it. You're going to fix it. You're going to keep going until bam, like something just breaks you down to your knees, quite literally. And you have to reevaluate. And then I think that natural intuition does come in. I don't know if that happens for everybody. However, I think things do happen for a specific reason. And now not only can you coach from like an educated stance, you've done this, you've run laps, you literally lived it. Like you have this example of like, well, I'm a tried and true example, plus school, plus education, plus experience. But here's my example of me doing it. I think that's so critical for coaches nowadays to say like, no, I didn't Google, how to help you on the way over to the meeting. I literally lived this and have walked through it and helped people in a certain way. And now, this was 20 years ago, they told me a certain thing, and I'm out here kicking ass in CrossFit and, doing family stuff and running a full schedule and being an entrepreneur, and like everything they said wasn't true. And again, you got to remember, doctors are like parents. They're doing the best they can with what they have. And the thing is, they're not fortune tellers. They're not future readers. They're just telling you something that, to the best of their knowledge, this might be what happens. Even if they say it definitively, also don't believe, things that are too definitive. I've learned over the years, but it's really just, the best of what they have. Tell me a little bit, it was more natural for you, but let's lean into this like possibility mindset or growth mindset of how you embrace what was already there, but maybe if someone that's not so natural for them, like tips or angles that they can at any age lean into if they're facing some really tough news or just a tough situation in general. We've got a lot going on in our world, and we, a possibility mindset and growth mindset is always something we need in our back pocket.
Absolutely. And it is interesting because it was so natural for me at that time that I was almost surprised when someone wasn't so optimistic. Because it was so habitual. I was like, why would I not be optimistic? What? It was just, I didn't get it at that time. I get it now.
Yeah.
To be honest, majority of people who would have been given the diagnosis and the prognosis that I would be given, my experience is probably 80 to 90% feel would actually lean towards the more negative, be in a bit more fear and a bit more worry. And that's totally normal and totally natural. It's not even a judgment. It's just an awareness. Right? That it is common for the first gut reaction to go into worst case scenario.
Right.
There are a number of things and perspectives that I use and that I recommend to kind of help keep that positive, or not even positive. To be honest, Kristen, if someone is in that and they've just been given a diagnosis of cancer or a business diagnosis, you're going to go bankrupt. I honestly, in a lot of cases with clients, I don't even recommend that. Let's just think positive and hope for the best. Because they're the negative part of them. The inner voice is just like, wow, yeah, right. You don't even know what I'm going through. Like I just got cancer. How could you expect me to be positive? So I actually try to help them shift the words they use, and I can give a few examples. the words that they use to shift to a more neutral place, maybe slightly more positive, eventually positive, perhaps if they're capable of it. But I often use, I don't know if you've probably heard of, an energy scale of,
Sure.
being in like grief or anger or shame, or it's really low, and then joy, gratitude, and love is, super high. But there's a whole bunch in the middle there. And if you just are in grief because you just got a diagnosis, and I'm trying to get you to go up to gratitude and think of all the best things in your life, there's just so many levels in between that people have a hard time jumping all the way up to that. But going into a place of, perhaps understanding. Can I go into a place of, can you just take a few deep breaths? I actually, like I said, I actually really have people change their words. I am such a, if you get to know me, like, words is one of my biggest things. Your words are a reflection of your thoughts and your beliefs. And if you change your words repeatedly, you can shift your thoughts and your beliefs with consistency, not just one time.
Well, give us some good examples. I don't want to cut off your flow, but I think this is a good thing to lean into, and we'll jump back on path here.
For sure. Yeah. So instead of saying, I can't believe I've got this diagnosis, there's no hope, I mean, it's cancer. I know I'm using that. I will be, this is not medical advice. I want to be careful if I'm using, I'll say MS in my own experience. It's multiple sclerosis. It's typically degenerative. Why bother? I'm probably going to end up in a wheelchair. Nothing's going to work. The doctor said that my diet change probably won't do anything. It might help a little, but probably won't. I've tried everything. I'm not the kind of person who can go gluten-free. I'm not the kind of person who can relax. I have so much on my plate. How can you expect me to? So I'm giving you all the negative sentences and negative words.
Yeah.
That would commonly come out. So let's flip that over, and we could say, I'm trying to use some positive ones. I often would say, I am going to choose to shift my perspective on this, or specifically with actions, saying I'm going to choose to reduce my task list, instead of saying I have to or I can't reduce my task lists, saying I'm going to choose to take one thing off my list. I am choosing is three words that can absolutely change someone's life, instead of I have to, I need to, I can't, I don't want to, it's not possible. Just saying I am choosing. Even if you don't believe you can choose, to try to shift and say that I am choosing. I love saying that I am able. I am able. It is possible, or I believe that it is possible that I could have a different trajectory here. I believe that it's possible that the doctor's prognosis isn't correct, right? I believe that it is possible. That is not saying I am guaranteed to heal, and I know I will, I can, and I will, and I'm on it, because if you're not there yet. But if you're thinking I can't, it's not possible, then just saying I believe that it is possible that I could get better. Can you say that? Can you believe that it is possible that I could get better? I believe that I am worthy of getting better. I believe that there is enough time, there is enough love, or I'm starting to believe that there is enough, or I'm starting to see that it's possible. I'm giving I call them progressive affirmations.
Yeah.
If you're not there yet, but you can just use the words I am starting to believe, or I believe it is possible. Once you're there, if you're there and I can and I will, then go all the way. I just, a lot of the time if folks are in this in between space, that instead of saying I can't or it's not possible, saying I believe that it could be possible. I believe that I do have some control. I believe that there are people who could help me. Because someone will say that it's not possible. There's no one can help me, and I've tried everything. What? Right. Of course you haven't tried everything. That's literally impossible to try everything. Like, it's actually a fact that that's not possible. So you gotta check your words, and it's really effective if you have someone in your home or in your life who can also be on this journey with you, that can catch your words and also be one to shift your language as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
Mhm.
I think it's like you initially said, it's like flexing that muscle of awareness. Like if you can get into that conscious space of like, all right, what do I really care about? What are my goals here? What are my desires? And then it's like, well, shit, I'm here. What else can I unpack? Like what is my mindset? How do I talk to myself? And this is I mean, as an athlete and an entrepreneur, transitioning to entrepreneurship was easy for me because athletes, I learned very early. I was a top 20 D1 athlete. It was like discipline and all these lessons I needed. They were outside of sports. I was there to compete, and that's all I cared about. But really, I was getting all these life skills of consistency, discipline, and what have you. And I wish I had more of this mindset coaching earlier on of like, do you think you're going to score the goal? Are you worried you're going to drop the ball? Like, I wish I had more of an awareness of the negative talk that I had. So this is like, I think, a continued practice, just like CrossFit, sports, entrepreneurship, that you got to stay in it. So yes, if you can get the
Yes.
humans around you to hold you in some sort point of accountability,
Yeah.
but just that daily check-in of like, what am I saying to myself? And then it's such an old school thing to be like, I've tried everything. Like that's such
Yeah.
a parent thing to say. Like, don't do that. Don't antiquate yourself like right there off the bat. Like, don't become your parents right away.
Yeah, right. And I
But
really appreciate that sports analogy as well, because that's a great example of all science and theology believe there's a lot of things that they're not aligned in, but believe that you become what you think about.
yes,
And so if you're thinking, and you've probably heard this, I'm going to drop the ball. I'm going to drop. What if I drop the ball? I hope I don't drop the ball. Even if you say, I hope I don't drop the ball, if you close your eyes, what is the picture that you see in your mind right now? You see dropping the ball. I've used this with even young children. I do this with my son all the time. All the time. I will never. He's 9 now, but I would never have said to him, "Don't put your fingers in the socket. Don't spill the milk." Because kids think in pictures. So do adults, but kids even more so. If you say, "Don't spill your milk," he's going to spill his milk not even weird spiritual reasons, that may be so as well, but because the picture in your child's mind is now spilling milk. That's what they see, even though you said
yep,
don't spill. If you say, hold your cup steady, hold it steady, hold it steady, hold it steady, or walk around the pool, always get your walking feet in, make sure you're walk confidently around the pool, instead of saying, don't run, don't run, don't run.
right,
Like
right.
we are so unconsciously using our minds in photographic ways that we create what we expect to create by the pictures we hold. So
100%. Well, what's
Mhm.
funny is like, because if you don't, we'll get to like the science and the woo and the balance there, the turmeric and tequila, because all things can be true. And I always want to tell my parents, I don't have kids, but I've coached for my entire life. So I've worked with our young people forever and I love it so much. If I could tell parents one thing, it's that your kids are listening. You are their absolute first influencer. Like whatever you think, however much you think they're not listening or they don't like you or whatever, they're different than you. They absolutely are. You are 100% their first influencer, and they're listening to it. And when you're saying don't do it and they do it, well, it's showing you right there that it's working. That they're listening, they're picturing this, and they're doing what you're saying not to do because that's what they see. So if you flip that, like it literally, the example of not to do it is showing that it works. So you can shift it to saying that it does do it. So I hope that makes sense, but
Yeah,
it's literally showing you that it's out there and it's working and they're listening.
absolutely. If you got a teenager and you say, don't come home late, you better not come home late tonight, you better not get home late, instead of saying, please come home on time. I would really appreciate if you come home on time. Are you able to come home on time tonight? Would you be able to come home on time? Like now
Yeah.
they're thinking on time, on time, on time, on time. I want to be on time. I want to be on time.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so crazy, but it seems too simple almost. And yet
Right.
you just practice it, test it out with your children and
Yeah.
yourself, and you'd be shocked at how effective the use of words is.
Well, we think that positive change or like these big things have to be like this big grand gesture of it's got to be hard, it's got to be rigorous, when it's like no, small things can equate to large change, and it can happen over time, and it's just one small shift. I think just in our American and perhaps the Canadian, she's in Canada, we're international right now,
Mhm.
societies that we need this grandiose thing to make this big pivot where really you don't. It can be something smaller, it can be just you doing one thing different, and that's enough. Was that easily attainable for you as a high achiever, or was it like you were searching for this big huge thing to change like all this stuff at once?
Like when I first got my diagnosis, or just in
Well,
general?
just in general. I mean, I'm guessing diagnosis, but even like, getting out of college and like chasing these big goals, like, I mean, kind of life in general as challenges approach us.
Mhm. For sure, when I was getting into things, I was always looking for the big things. What is the big thing I can do to move mountains? And I have since, having been studying this for almost 10 years now, like psychology, have come to understand that the way you make the most profound change is actually small things repeated over time, small shifts. And then you, in a year, you look back or you bump into someone who you haven't seen in a year, and they're like, wow, you're so different. And, so many things have changed, and you almost don't realize the magnitude because it's actually the small incremental change. It's like the hockey stick, right? It seems small at first, the willingness to be consistent over time, which I did martial arts for 10 years, even prior to my MS experience. So that did cultivate in me an ability to be disciplined, which has served me very well in other areas of life. But that was also cultivated through doing that 5 days a week, gradually becoming more and more disciplined. It happened to be as a child, but that's the thing. It's like the willingness to make small incremental changes and trust that over time, right, that they absolutely make a profound impact.
The compound interest, it adds up.
Yeah,
exponentially.
Like interest.
Well, let's unpack a little bit, because I love turmeric and tequila. I love it's a nice lighthearted metaphor that mutually exclusive things can coexist peacefully, even when they seem different. They can sit together, and I think that's the science and like the energy. And to me, at the end of the day, everything's energy. You can get into this physics conversations if you're more into like the woo and intuition and like all that, yes. And the measurement of energy is physics, so kind of always comes back to the science. However, I love like mindset in that, like, I'm a freedom chaser. So like knowing that I have control or the ability to do me, to manifest, to do all this stuff. However, the science explained, I'm not one of those that really cares. I just like to know and trust my gut and be out there. But for my science people, like, tell me how you kind of navigated the line between science and woo or energy or like intuition. Like, how did you balance that in your studies and in your own personal journey?
To be honest, it was over the past 10 years learning some of the science aspects and seeing how I would call myself a Christian, seeing how it overlaps with the Bible. I'm like, oh, those are all the exact same principles. They're just worded slightly differently.
Yep.
And seeing how it overlaps with, other religions, not just Christianity. Like they're actually all saying the same things. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. The holidays are around the same time. Like there's a few commonalities here.
And I do study a lot of kind of spiritual teachers who are not religious, but different Michael Bernard Beckwith and Wayne Dyer and some of the spiritual teachers that kind of share the concepts. Sure. And it just allowed me to feel comfortable, just to feel like I trust that I kind of realized in my own version of it, that it's all saying the same thing. I don't believe there's actually very little that is showing differences, right? Like the law of cause and effect, maybe the science, the law of the harvest, right? Is that what you reap what you sow, is maybe more from, religion. And it's just, or the law of karma, what you put out comes back, right? They're all saying the same thing in just different ways. So hope for me, that has just allowed me to feel super confident and trusting. And I just feel like I can trust myself and trust myself to also find the information that I feel aligned with. And it's been pretty powerful.
Well, and I think that in itself, that open-mindedness, again, here we are with awareness, is really critical, because it's not just about you right now. You're a point of influence. You're an influencer. You're a leader. You're a coach. You want to be as equipped as you can to serve your clientele, your people, even your family. And so I think it's really important for our leaders like yourself to have this open-mindedness. Even if you don't agree with something, that's okay. Just learn the intel so you have it, within. So it's another tool in your tool belt where you can service your community. Because as you also said, like you are positive. No one else got that. I can't believe other people didn't. Like we are so different. Like humans are individuals on so many levels. Our DNA is so similar, blah, 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 but we are truly different. We're a collection of different experiences. And as a coach or leader, parent, whatever, you got to have these abilities to somehow customize your approach with each human to better relate, to better connect, even if it's not a professional thing, just to, vibe with them on a very human, casual level at CrossFit. Like you got to be able to be open-minded to people believing things different. And then in fact, when you actually have the conversation, you're like, oh, well, this person's a Democrat, this person's a Republican, but dang, our core values are right in a line. We have different reasons but it's like just having that open-mindedness of maybe it's this or that, but maybe we can exist right here in this and sign and not have to choose, either side, and then further connect with our people.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. It's actually a Wayne Dyer quote you may have heard, but I live by. It says, be a person who is open to everything and attached to nothing.
Hey,
And
I
I
love that.
even would share, like, I believe what I believe right now.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to finding new information that might shift what I think or believe in this then. It's just I love that philosophy, and that it just allows me, at least in my experience, to be open and unattached. It also allows me to just handle things in life, right? If I thought I was
Yes.
working on this big business project, expecting these big results, and it doesn't turn out that way, I can say, "Oh, isn't that interesting?"
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
darn, we lost all that money.
Right.
Like, it's not joyful. I don't have to be excited, but I'm not attached. Or if I have a big vision, or you have a goal you're working towards, and the first attempt or the method you use to get to that goal doesn't work, you're not attached to it. You haven't tried everything yet. Just try something else, and it can be uncomfortable or painful if you put a lot of time or money or resources into something and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
But the reason it's really painful, the suffering comes when you're attached to it. If you're unattached to it, you can allow yourself to learn the lessons. And so, yeah.
I love that. Well, amen. I think, the famous quote, I'm not traditionally religious by any means, but I'm here for all of like the readings and intel and all things. And being a branding professional, it's so funny to me how people get so wrapped up in the packaging, the label. And I'm like, the fucking product is the exact same thing it was. That's great change. Like, I get it. I'm here for you. I'm here to help you do this process. And it's like your soul, however we identify ourselves is fine. It is the exact same thing. No, I can tell you I'm 52 or 26 or, I'm great at cycling or I'm a CrossFitter, but you're looking at exactly what it is. So it's, the branding thing is always kind of just like a funny thing for me personally. And I consistently have to have that awareness and let go of things. And like you say, not be attached. Like, we're doing the podcast, we're doing this business. And it's like, well, life's what happens when, or what's the quote where it's, life's what happens when you're busy making plans, or God looking out for you, something like that.
Yeah.
And it's true, because most of the things you plan are not going to happen. Like, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that's actually good news, because usually if you let go and hold space just enough, this is consistent work in progress in my own life, like the right things will come in. And that's really, really, really hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just the freedom. Like, it made me think of, I take quite a few flights, and if I miss a flight, or if I'm about, I'm not, I can just breathe through it. I'm like, okay, maybe I'm supposed to meet someone on the next flight, or there's some, like, it's just, I rarely will be, I've done it enough, done this work on myself enough to almost not feel disappointed at all.
Okay.
Which sometimes, though, you got to be careful. If you train yourself so well, then you have to also realize if there is a challenge, like, don't not see the challenge because you're so quick to shift, and other people might think you don't care.
Yeah.
That has been definitely was my experience as I started to evolve, and I would not get into gossip or not get into complaining. I would just be like, oh, it's okay. Like, well, it's cool. Like, we'll pivot, we'll shift. And sometimes the receiver is not on that wavelength. And especially if you're changing and they aren't aware of your changes, it can, they can think you don't care, or you're, don't you see? Right. So it's just interesting having these perspectives, growing personally, and being aware of the other people in your life. They need to be brought in to the fact that you're changing your perspective.
Totally. Well, there's cultural and social norms there that need to be consistently unpacked. I do want to ask, so intentionally, for our young people, but also for our adults, because I've noticed as I've done work, it does need to be a conscious conversation. I hope it is amongst your family and friends, because those should be the humans you're closest to. But the 5 people around you are your biggest influences. As you did your work and I'm going to say, like, leveled up, higher vibration, did you see the humans around you start to shift in and shift out? Like, did you have a different group?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I did. I mean, my direct family, my parents, are fairly high vibe, I would say.
Okay.
So I'm very blessed and grateful. So that, and even my siblings, but I did have some friends and some peers that, I for the most part, I didn't have a negative major falling out. However, that does happen. That can happen. And I have had clients where that has happened. But for the most part, what happened in my own life experience is that I just spent less time with or change the types
naturally.
of conversations, set some new boundaries, and so that, and then added the new people who are.
Mhm.
It just, right, if someone's in a worst case scenario way of habitually thinking, or they just they think it's dangerous to go start this business or dangerous to go to CrossFit, that's fine. I don't even want to judge them for their perspective or their belief. We can't talk about those things because we're not on the same page. So I would just choose to spend less time with or not talk to some people, and then add more people who are ahead. Right. If you're the smartest person in the room, then get into another room. So I just find people who are even farther along in their journey of personal development or growth or spirituality, or, to be able to just say, wow, really, when you're surrounded by that type of that way of thinking consistently, which I am because I work in this industry. So I'm surrounded by a lot of people in that way of thinking. You just never want to give up because you have people who are influencing you to keep going. It doesn't mean you won't pivot, right? Like you might pivot if that pathway or that even your goal or your path that may evolve, but you're never going to quit on yourself when you're surrounded by people who continuously help you move forward and see a positive perspective.
Amen. That's so real. We talk a lot about, again, marketing and branding. It's kind of funny that I found myself in marketing branding because it's just leadership and roles. It's such a juxtaposition as we're here for, intentionality with my young people and everything else, because so many messages are coming through TV, phone, what have you. And being a marketer, you're kind of controlling that. If reality is nothing more than applied meaning, a lot of the meaning is coming through this is as a young person. But it's good for us as adults to recognize that, yes, that power of influencers is real. It's a thing. It was long before the term was coined a certain way for marketing and branding or big companies or sales. It's been there. So like those 5 people around you are your influencers, even as a 99-year-old. Like we are constantly products of our environment. And again, that awareness and that consciousness. So like, all right, like what are we talking about? And I think it's just like nutrition, where it's like, don't worry about if you want to lean out for a competition or gain muscle or whatever. Don't worry about taking stuff out. Start adding protein in, start adding something in, and everything else will naturally filter out. You'll eat less ice cream because you're full, or you won't want to be around the negativity because your cup's full from the positive conversation with the right friend. So I do think sometimes if you're just even mildly aware, it will just naturally
100%. No, that's a good point, because then that was my own personal experience as well. I didn't have to have a breakup conversation with a friend or family member. It just, we no longer resonated as much.
Yeah.
If someone,
and that's okay.
If they used to complain to me and I'd be like, oh, that does suck. I can't believe that happened, and now I say, oh, it's okay, or I just change the topic. Like I'm not a sounding board. People in my life today know, my whole team knows, like we can be open and authentic and vulnerable if they need, but if you're coming to me just to vent, like I'm not probably the right person for that.
Right. Well, it comes down to protecting your own energy. Like if you're showing up for clients and you're a mom and you got your gym workouts, and I think selfish gets such a bad term, but if you're not filling your own cup and taking care of yourself and selfish with your energy, you can't serve. Like you cannot serve without being selfish in some capacity. So it's really important. Did you have a breakthrough there where you're just like, all right, I got to draw some hard lines and so I can show up for the greater good?
I mean, I do today, but I don't know. I think it maybe was kind of when we were talking about gradually over time.
Yeah.
I didn't have like a moment necessarily that I put a line in, although that does happen. I've had many clients who've had to do that, where there are instances. Although I do remember, I'm just thinking of our parents with children. My son he's 9 now, but there are some influence. There's some, because you're so influenced by the people around you, as you were talking about, adults and children. I've had moments where I'm like, oh, I want to just like sort of monitor the amount of time that you're influenced by these people. Like he doesn't have anyone in his life who's just a totally terrible influence that thankfully I don't, at least not that I'm aware of, but I'm like wanting to monitor a little bit of how much time are you being influenced, not because every little soul is perfect. The soul inside of them is perfect. And we talk about, it's not a bad person. It's just a good person having some bad behavior, making bad decisions. Like, so I tried to separate from, people themselves being bad versus just maybe taking actions that are not effective or not, or could be either dangerous or just negative or mean or whatever. Cause he's 9. But I am conscious and intentional with like having conversations with him Like, how do you feel when you're around this person? Do you
Yeah.
feel good or do you feel not good? Like, and I'm trying to not, and for those who are parents, thinking about having conversations with their children, try not to have leading questions. A leading question is when you ask a question and you're expecting a specific answer. Attempt to not do that. Coaching 101. Don't ask leading questions. If I do ask a leading question, I tell the client, this is a leading question. And the answer is yes.
Caution tape.
So I
Yeah.
be honest. But for the most part, like actually genuinely, ask. And that's just something that I've done with my son. And I remember as a child, I wonder if you've had this experience, Kristen, but when I was a child, I had, I think I was maybe 12 or 13. My mother stopped me, wouldn't allow me to, there's one girl, I was no longer allowed to play with her.
Okay.
And I remember being angry and frustrated and like, how can you control who I'm playing with? How can you stop me from playing with my friend? If I think back, I knew she wasn't good business. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't process that at the time, but now I know that she wasn't. But I'm like, oh my goodness, I get it now, Mom. It just took me 30 years.
Yeah.
But I get it. Like even back then, without understanding you are the product of the 5 people you spend the most time with and how much you're influenced by others. You just know, right? We know this. As a parent, we know this.
Yeah.
Therefore, think about as an adult, you were also in the exact same situation. You were also being influenced by the people that are around you. But it is really interesting to be open and intentional. I did want to share or even get your thoughts on when it comes to influence. And we're talking about energy, and if we can go into that stuff, like the actual way that you influence someone else, I have come to believe is primarily through your vibe, the frequency you're on. What radio station are you on? You don't even need to have words.
Right.
And that's why as a parent and your child's playing with someone and you're like, oh, I get a bad vibe.
Yep.
This is bad. It's a vibe. It's feeling. It's not even without knowledge or information or words. Like so kind of with that willingness to trust your intuition, both as a parent for your children or in your own life with people around you, you don't have to know all the details to decide whether or not this is a positive influence. You can be willing to just trust your feeling.
Well, and it kind of goes back to our conversation of like, as a kiddo where you did or didn't do things, you didn't have this big conscious conversation, all these degrees and, courses and all this stuff. Like I'm here for the higher education, beginning on Varsity Humans, all of that. And the biggest thing I would tell my kids right now is stop listening. Don't listen to your parents. Don't do this. And obviously don't do bad things, whatever, but get with yourself and get to know that inner voice and start to unpack that early and just trust your gut, because energy can't be created or destroyed. This is basic physics. It is what it is. And, as you you rub your hands together, there's heat, that heat goes to somewhere. So we are constantly ingesting and excluding or exuding energy. So it's this consistent exchange between humans that we're so unconscious of, and we don't talk a lot about it. But yeah, if you're picking up a bad vibe, even if you can't explain it, you don't even need to go tout it from the rooftops of like this person XYZ. Just lean in, have some grace, take some space, and unpack it with yourself. And that's enough. I think we get way too far into the academic side of like explaining this. And like, I get it, because I'm one of those too. And as a 0-year-old, you knew, intuitively for foraging and hunting before things were as established and, it's civilized as it is. Like you had these instincts: don't touch the fire, don't run after the rhino, like do certain things that are there. So I think vibes are everything. This could be a whole podcast in itself, but energy in general, when you get a vibe, and I was a comm major, I think it's like 80+% of our communication is nonverbal. So if you're reading the room and you have the awareness, you can tell if someone's just, not awesome or is awesome. There was this book, oh God, it's been years, I don't even think I finished it, I gave it away. It's called Truth is a Frequency. And there was some example where they would hold food, like if this was an apple at like Whole Foods or whatever, and you could close your eyes and stand there, and if it was good for you personally, like your body would lean forward or backward, and you could intuitively see if something's good or bad for you. So that's, I don't know how in-depth science that is, but there's one example I never forgot where it's like, man, all answers truly are within. Here for the research, here for all of it. And if you can really get in touch with yourself and then lean into that intuition and trust yourself, I really think that's 90% of life.
Yeah, absolutely. I did partway through my career journey opened a health food store. I mean,
okay.
So for 3 years, I ran a health food business, primarily supplements, but we had I got a nutritional designation as a nutritional practitioner at that time. And I had naturopaths and nutritionists that worked in our environment. And we had, there's a whole other story to that. But as to why I got out of it, it was primarily because I realized that there was something deeper. There was a mental block that was stopping most of our clients from actually making progress. And that's when I got into psychology. But the point that I brought it up was actually because of what you're sharing. I was not aware of energy work or like the, I can't even call it food testing. What do they call energy testing kind of thing?
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was, but we had a number of clients that would come in and pick up a supplement bottle and then just close their eyes, like muscle testing, I think they called it.
Yeah, I think it's muscle testing. Yeah.
I forget. I guess I haven't really studied it too much. Or they would just hold it up against their body, or they might decide they want a particular supplement, but in terms of deciding which brand they would want, they would, either hold it against themselves or do muscle testing, like if it's easy to push your arm up or not easy to push your arm up. That's, and it was really fascinating to me. And I haven't really gone down that path too much, clearly, by my lack of understanding of how I'm explaining it. But it was true, right? It was, it's just, there's so many different ways. And if you can be open and unattached and non-judgmental, it may or may not be your way for making decisions, but just knowing that there's so much out there and there's so much that you can trust that is within you. The answers are usually within you.
Yeah.
You just need to open them up and pull back the layers and the false beliefs and the things that don't allow you to see them.
Yes. Well, and the hard part is sometimes you don't want to believe it's you. Like you want to skirt the responsibility on someone else, or you want Nicole to fix you, or you want whatever. And it's like, nope, actually, you're going to have to do the work. You have to address the shit, crawl in it, unpack it, and then you'll be good to go. But there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is really, for parents speaking to their children, I think that's a powerful thing as well, to remember that to be willing to take responsibility. As a parent, if my son, and he has said it, he said, why did you do that thing? Whatever, if I made a mistake or forgot something or didn't do what I said I was going to do, I will just apologize instead of defending. Well, I couldn't because I ran out of time. You don't run this household. You don't see how many things I have on my life. Right? That's both super negative energy. Maybe it's a fact, but it is not going to serve the situation. Right. I will always recommend and I will also say, take your portion of the responsibility, because sometimes it's not fully, it is someone else's things, or there's other pieces, there's someone else was involved in making why that happened or didn't happen. Just take your portion of the responsibility. And sometimes it's just like, I'm sorry that happened. I'm sorry that that's how you experienced that. Or maybe I am sorry if I forgot to do something, but it doesn't have to be the word sorry. I don't like, this is a whole nother story. I don't like to necessarily overly use sorry and put yourself down and take the blame. But if you can say, I'm sorry that that's how you felt about that. I didn't realize how important that was to you.
There you go. Feeling seen and feeling heard, just recognize.
And now they're like, oh my gosh, immediately will stop a temper tantrum. I mean, he's 9, he doesn't want temper tantrums, but immediately stop a blowout if you can just take your portion of the responsibility. There you go. And it also trains them to take their portion of the responsibility, whether they will or won't yet. That's, but you're modeling by example, at least.
Absolutely. Yeah. Leading by example. You're the influencer again. I know that word still has a cringe status, but it's so real. And there are 40-year-olds that throw tantrums. So go ahead and write this down. All ages. It's a piece of the puzzle. Well, this is such a valuable conversation. So many gems dropped. I think there is such a beautiful and eloquent balance of the yin and the yang between science and energy, and questioning better ways, and really just getting all this intel so you can be such an amazing therapist, leader, coach in your own life. And I know that serves your clientele, and honestly, all the humans you interact with in such a phenomenal capacity. Tell us where we find you, book, practice, anything else you want to share, and then I'll hit you with our final question.
For sure. Yeah, my primary audience, a lot of the clients that I work with are entrepreneurs or business owners. Like, I probably would say 80% are in that. And it didn't start that way. And we're not specifically business coaches. We are working, as in myself and the company I work with, Elevated Worldwide. It's because they're and athletes, right? People, you have to be willing to know that you do have some control of your results. You have, and I have found entrepreneurs, business owners, salespeople, athletes, they know when I change, my results can change. If I grow, I know I can change the outcome. So that's often the perspective. But you can find me at NicoleKernohan.com. I would probably just go straight to, that's my personal primary website, NicoleKernohan.com. I do have a free abundance journal on there. It's about just kind of helping you to journal for 30 days. There's a focus on financial abundance, but it's really applicable to just an abundant way of thinking in all areas of life. And I also have a spot on my website if you want to connect and have a free chat and just learn a little bit more. I'm happy to connect through that as well.
I love that so much. I love that we have humans like you with such intentionality and personal responsibility, because we are in such a shift, especially in the market and the business place, of this new school leadership of, recognizing areas of improvement. You're walking it, like really humanizing things. And I know that's what all people need, but especially our young people. Final question for you. What is success to you?
Success to me, that's a great question. I actually use an ancient definition of success. I wouldn't say ancient, but it's from Earl Nightingale. Success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. That's in his words. And I would just say success is when you are making progress towards a vision or a goal that is meaningful.
Yeah.
So success is, in my opinion, knowing where you're going. So you do have to put a destination to the GPS. Otherwise, it's just going to keep telling you where you are. So getting some clarity on having a goal in your life, a purpose and a vision, and then making progress, right? Yeah. Progress is not only success, progress is happiness. How awesome do you feel when you make a little bit of progress? Yeah. Right? When you get there, the happiness, it's scientifically proven. I took a positive psychology course with Yale on happiness specifically. Hey. And it was like, when you achieve the goal, your happiness lasts for 1 hour to 2 days.
Yes.
And you can be proud and grateful and celebrate it. It's just the actual emotion doesn't hold. It's progress. So progress towards a worthy goal is my definition of success.
Boom. I love that. Shout out to Lux Neurofeedback. I'm in it. They're a sponsor. I love them. And some of this stuff is quite literally measurable on the brain maps and some of your brain activity. So it's a physical science measurable. It's wild. I do feel compelled to ask you. So I guess actual last question, what's a big goal for you? Do you have a big vision in mind? I'm really curious to know.
Yeah, I do.
Let's go. What is it?
I do. One of my big visions, I'm working on a book. I'm a co-author in a few books, but I'm working on my single individual personal book. But my big vision is to be a guest on Oprah, on a show with Oprah Winfrey. So I have her on my phone. You probably may not be able to see for those who are watching the video. That's me and Oprah, although it's photoshopped.
Yes, girl. I love this. Okay.
But yeah, she's super inspiring to me, her whole life story, and the ability to do that would mean that I know I will have the capacity to influence a whole lot of people because of her platform. So
chase and impact. I love it. And I love the visualization, not creepy at all. You cut and pasted her. I'm going to do that. I've done that with a few things. And I would say, your lips to God, universe, and Madonna's ears. I see it coming through all the way. And that's awesome. And I love the energy in general. I think that's your most powerful asset, and the positivity is tangible, which is remarkable and so needed. You probably couldn't be more on time just in the landscape of the world right now. So I wish you all the power vibes. But I love it. Keep doing what you're doing, but mostly just keep doing you. Cause I think, like I said, I think that's your most sellable point. That is that's the impact piece.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Yes. I wish you all luck. Go check out what Nicole has going on. I will, of course, list all her handles and labels out there. And perhaps when you have the book out, we'll revisit this conversation and we'll have you and Oprah on the show.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Right. Thank you, Nicole.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining Turmeric and Tequila with your host, Kristen Olson. Tune in next time, and don't forget to subscribe on Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.